Hello, it's me, Melissa of Elevate Palm Beach, taking your team to next level performance. This is my second resource review, and this time I am reviewing the Processing Pinnacle, an educator's guide to better processing. And the authors are there right at the top. Now, this isn't what you call an ordinary leadership book, but leaders, CEOs, managers, HR departments, they are nothing but facilitators, and as a facilitator, processing is a huge part of facilitation. And this particular book I picked up years ago, or learned about years ago, as a student facilitator and being in that area of experiential education and some of my training as a facilitator. And it's helped me to better understand different kinds of groups and the different kinds of facilitation that I need to be doing, or the different kinds of processing that goes with those different kinds of groups, because every group is going to be different, and it kind of depends on the people in it and also how long you have them for. So if you have them for a shorter period of time, the facilitation and processing might be a little different than it would be if you had them for an extended period of time. So this book follows, as an example, two different kinds of facilitators. And the first facilitator is all about processing. They're very efficient when it comes to processing, while the other one likes to use the activity and the field of experiential education. They call it, let the mountains speak for themselves. So the experience itself is enough for people to be reflective on. And as you go along and they have their dialogue, they both come to the realization that they need to kind of be more flexible on what their beliefs are as far as processing goes. So they start to utilize each other's skills, each other's strengths. So the one who's more process-oriented kind of sometimes leaves it up to the experience when necessary, and then the other one who is more experience-oriented has more intentional processing. And a combination of both, I think, is really effective depending on what you're doing. And the Processing Pinnacle in itself, they start off by saying that processing is on a continuum. So there's the continuum that they put. It goes all the way from facilitator front-loading all the way to independent reflection and all the steps in between, traditional Q&A, and participant-directed processing. And each one is a little different. And from there, they go to the Processing Pinnacle. They make it into a little mountain instead, with facilitator front-loading at the very bottom, working on their way up to independent reflection, which is any facilitator's goal, to be able to provide an experience and then have the participants reflect on it independently without help from the facilitator. We're just guides of the experience to kind of help people understand or get the most out of the experience. And this little quote in here says, the Processing Pinnacle, the purpose of processing increasingly shifts away from making explicit predetermined goals and toward teaching people the skills for independent reflection. So when left to their own devices, they will process on their own. So that's the main goal of processing. It doesn't always happen that way. Like I said, facilitator front-loading. Let me go back to the importance of processing. I believe that every experience needs some sort of reflection. Without processing, the experience doesn't have any meaning. There's no meaning to it. So we need to be more intentional about the experiences that we have, especially when it comes to corporate settings, when there's time and money spent into doing team building or professional development or organizational development. We need to be really intentional about the activities that we're putting forward, because it is time and money spent towards these activities. So from what I've been seeing, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what team building is or what it could be. I think a lot of people understand the importance of team building, but they lose the importance of the processing piece, or developing intentional experiences. So maybe they plan a fun day out of maybe going to do fun activities, whether it's happy hour or an escape room or bowling or whatever it is. Those are all great, and they have the potential of allowing people to do team building in that space, but those things alone are not team building. So you need to have some kind of intentional piece to it, so that way you can take back the skills needed back to work with you. Otherwise, you're just having a fun activity. It's another day. It's fine, but if you're wanting to put more value into what you're doing, to make your organization a little bit better and the relationships within it better, then it has to be more intentional, which would include processing. So facilitator front loading, it looks very much the way it sounds. In the beginning of an experience, I might front load what the activity is or what it should be and what to look out for. I used this a lot when I was doing facilitation at a treatment center because the group dynamics were always changing, and I had participants for a short period of time, and often they didn't understand why we were doing what we were doing because I was taking them outdoors, and they would often ask me, what does this have to do with my recovery? And I said I would be really excited when somebody asked me this question, because I said, that's a great question, let's break that down. But I would usually tell them what the experience is about and what to look for. Maybe I wanted to focus on communication that day, so I would say in the very beginning, focus on how you're communicating, and we'll talk about it at the end. So that's kind of what facilitator front loading is. Traditional Q&A at the end, or sprinkled in, you know what that looks like. You ask a question and it's just a back and forth Q&A. Participant directed processing allows for the participants to have more of a handle on the situation and the processing and where it's going. They have more of a say of what they want to focus on, because sometimes a facilitator's goal might be different from what the participant's goal is. So it really kind of pushes it back on them to lead where the conversation is going. So maybe as a facilitator, I think we need to focus on this, but maybe as a participant, they might get stuck on this other thing and then want to spend more time doing it. Participant-directed processing also encompasses the processing balls that are out there. They have it looks like a small soccer ball, and all the little circles on it have questions in them, and you toss it around, and they answer the question that their thumb lands on. So that's a little bit more participant-directed processing, and of course independent reflection, which could be journaling, but it's really at that point having an experience and then the facilitator being able to step back and letting them facilitate or direct the conversation. This can be seen in my previous resource review, my first one, when I talked about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. The leader or facilitator, she was more front-loading in the beginning, question and answering, and towards the end of the whole process, you could see the participants starting to ask questions of one another and holding each other accountable and pointing out things that they were struggling with or what they noticed. So that goes all the way up to independent reflection. And the Processing Pinnacle points out that we humans are not naturally we don't naturally process experiences. We go on and we might not consider the meaning behind an experience, but we should really be evaluating what our experiences are and what they mean, and how we could do stuff better in the future. In an organization, that might be a department having a meeting and kind of analyzing a project, what worked, what didn't work, what can we do better next time, whether it's the actual project itself or the soft skills that were used together in the team to develop that project. So it could look either way. The thing I also like about this book is a little, first, a newbie facilitator guide. It has in the back a field guide with a little table of contents of different things that might come up, whether it's a challenge, communication, conflict, rules, teamwork, etc. And it has like a list of questions that can be used depending on the experience. So yeah, that's the Processing Pinnacle. And again, it's not a normal leadership book, but it is much useful for a facilitator, and I believe that all managers, upper management, should learn facilitation skills to become better at leading their teams. And as my contracts go, I do 3, 6, or 12-month contracts where I do a needs assessment in the beginning to figure out what is needed for your team, and I design trainings and workshops. And one of these workshops that I provide is my Beyond Leading a Facilitator's Guide, where I teach leaders to be facilitators so they can learn the skills that I have so that they can better help their team long after I'm gone. So that's the Processing Pinnacle. Check me out at www.elevatepb.com. I apologize, some of my dogs are making some noises in the background. And I'll see you next week for another resource review. Thanks.